This podcast and content posted by Dr. Judith Joseph is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnoses or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Hello, I'm so grateful that you chose to listen to this podcast. I'm Dr. Judith, a board-certified psychiatrist and researcher, and on this podcast, you will hear from world-renowned experts. At the end of every single podcast of The Vault, every expert talks about a time in their lives when they were struggling and no one knew it, and they talk about what they used to get through that struggle. So make sure you listen through till the end and you subscribe and share with a friend. Mandy Brooke is a multifaceted entertainer, and she's a powerhouse singer, songwriter, actress, and podcast host. Her hilarious social media content have left people wondering, what can't this girl do? Mandy is a bona fide social media sensation, garnering millions of views across platforms with her hilarious song parodies and everyday antics. And her relatable comedy style have led to 2 appearances on The Today Show with Hoda and Jenna, and countless mentions from the likes of Khloe Kardashian, Ludacris, Lil Jon, Lil Wayne, SZA, Jay Sean, and many more. I met Mandy through social media, where we became fangirls of each other's work and bonded over the fact that we were both going through divorces and we were both using social media to bring us joy and to bring other people joy. I was going through a divorce and I was like miserable, but I said, you know what? Let me just do something joyful. That's something that I was always afraid to do, like putting myself out there on social media because of all the judgment and the hate like you get as a therapist from your colleagues. And I just thought, you know what? Why not? Mandy joined me on my book tour as a visiting professor of my sold out Happiness Lab event at Cafe Con Libros, where she created a song about anhedonia. Anhedonia. It's a symptom of high functioning depression. It makes you feel blah and it makes you feel really meh. But you can fix it with this book. You won't want to miss this incredible and joyful episode of The Vault. Thank you so much for being in The Vault.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am more excited. I'm one of your biggest fans, and your page is like my self-help, self-care, really a part of my mental health regimen, because every time I need to laugh, every time I need to feel better, you're just so full of joy. So thank you for doing everything that you do.
Thank you so much. That's the purpose of my content. I just want to spread some joy and be an escape for people because the world is so crazy right now. And I just want people to feel comfortable in their skin and also feeling comfortable with their authenticity and their genuine self.
And you're just so honest, and like when you're going through tough times, we know it. When you're going through great times, we know it. You know, like you share so much of yourself. You bring your full self to the table, and so much of self-help these days is so curated. Mm-hmm. You know, like you and I were talking about how people who are self-help gurus, as you just said, you know, they kind of like have this image of perfection. And for people who are searching for help, for answers, and for support, having someone who's seemingly perfect give that advice can be a bit deflating. And it also feels out of reach in some ways, you know? So why do you think so many people gravitate towards these perfect self-help gurus?
Well, I think because that was all that was out there for a long time. I mean, you know, you're so used to seeing these manifestation coaches in their big, huge mansions, and they're like, here's how you manifest your dream life, girl. And you're like, I can't even relate to you because your house is 1.2 mil. Like, mm-hmm. I'm living in my parents' house, you know? So it's, when I come at it from that perspective and I'm just being as authentic as I can and connecting with fellow women that may be in the same situation, and I show them like, hey, this is how I got to the Monaco Grand Prix. You know, if I can do it, you can do it, girl. Like, it's definitely that anchor that I think a lot of people would need. And yeah, I just want to be authentic and genuine with everyone.
You're still pretty fabulous. I mean, like, you do wonderful things. You're very talented, but when you guide your followers, it doesn't feel as if happiness and joy is out of reach, that these goals are out of reach. So tell us about how you even started this work.
Gosh, I started raising my frequency. I call it raising your frequency, because we're all energy, we're all frequency. I mean, we're really made of water and fungus and flesh. You know, we can really do a lot with our bodies and our minds. And I started raising my frequency around 2022 after I separated from my marriage. And it was the worst time of my life. I was the most broken I've ever been. And I really think that there is something to be said from transmuting your brokenness into power. And that's what I was trying to do. I was like, I'm at the rock bottom right now. The only way to go is up. So let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And that's what I did. I was singing in the car. I was listening to frequencies in my car as well, and in my house that was raising my sacral chakra frequency. You know, there's a channel that I listen to called Meditative Mind, and it's ad-free music, and I love that channel. And I started to really just try to find the joy within the brokenness. Yeah, I was crying in my car while I was delivering bread for my best friend's bread company, but I was also making up funny songs to help myself laugh, like after the cry session. There's joy to be had even when you're really sad. That rhymes. And that's what I try to show people on my content. You know, we can be there, and also just to romanticize your life. Like, it's so much fun to sometimes be sad. Mm-hmm. Like, melancholy is not always bad, you know? I love crying on an airplane. That's my favorite place to cry. So once you start romanticizing your life and you start being passionate about things, even mundane things, about making dinner for your family or driving in the car to run your errands, you can put on the right soundtrack and make it feel like a movie. And that's what I really try to do in my life every single day.
I mean, like, we have very parallel lives, because at the time in 2022, when I started being on social, I was going through a divorce and I was like miserable. But I said, you know what? Let me just do something joyful. That's something that I was always afraid to do, like putting myself out there on social media because of all the judgment and the hate like you get as a therapist from your colleagues. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, you know what? Why not? Like, I need to be joyful. And why be miserable alone? Let me share some of my, personal experiences with others to see if they relate. And I just took off. I was surprised at how many people resonated with what I was putting out there. And so I think there's something to that, right? Like, how can you experience joy if you've never experienced misery? How can you experience happiness if you've never been depressed, right? Mm-hmm. And validating all of the full human experiences is really a part of living, right? Like, if you push down those sad or perceivingly negative emotions, then you're not being your full self. And that in itself, I think, is miserable, right? So I think there is something to saying that it's okay to cry. In my book, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it, but I talk about the different ways of venting, right? And in venting, there's singing, which you do quite often. And there's also crying, because when you cry, you let off hormones that literally make you feel better. So when we stop ourselves from crying, when we apologize for crying, we're basically saying, I apologize for being human, right? Because your tear ducts are there, yes, to keep your eyes moist so that, your eyes continue to see, but also to help you to relieve stress naturally.
Yeah. And to go back to your point about being a therapist and sharing your authentic experience, that's why people gravitated toward it, because mm-hmm. there's so many therapists in this space that, like we said before, are curating their content perfectly. And you came onto the scene and you were like, I'm just going to show people that I'm going through stuff too. And that's why I was drawn to you. Whenever I see your content pop up on my feed, I'm like, okay, I relate to this. This is cool. And then, you're on Oprah and you're doing all of these cool things. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you too. And let me just say, when I was like super buttoned up, not showing myself, nobody wanted to see that, like there is something about being real, right? And like showing that you're not perfect and letting your guard down. That is so powerful. And I just wish more people knew that, because they wouldn't feel so hard on themselves. They wouldn't compare themselves to these ideals that are just like, I think, impossible to live up to, right? Mm-hmm. If you just knew that you are the only you, literally the only you who will ever exist, who has ever existed, you would take more pride in that. You'd be like, wait a second, I'm here for a reason. I'm special. I'm the only me who will ever exist. You'd love yourself more. You'd live more, right? You'd be more free.
Mm-hmm. And you know what helped me too in my journey? I realized, and I know people say journey and it's kind of cheesy, but it's the truth.
It is the truth.
I remembered that I was very loved in my life. Even if you're loved by one person, even if that person is you, like even if you have no one around you and you're the only one that could love yourself, you're loved no matter mm-hmm. what. That really gave me the structure in order to climb the ladder. When you don't really recognize like how loved and how honored you actually are in your life by people that you wouldn't even know who loved you, once you realize that, you can really climb the ladder. That builds your foundation. That is
so profound. I think the idea of loving yourself has been lost today. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that if someone's listening and they're just feeling really low, like what are 3 ways that they can start that journey of loving themselves?
Look in the mirror. I know this is so weird, but look in the mirror and I know this sounds so cheesy, but start making funny faces and start lip syncing to your favorite songs in the mirror and be goofy. You'll start laughing. I promise you will. Laughing is the best medicine. And once you can start laughing at yourself, you can start loving yourself when you stop taking yourself so seriously. I think self-love is such a, I hate to say like a bastardized term. Is that even a word?
Because that is.
People, I'm so smart. Because people simulate, wow, I'm trying to use so many big words now. People compare self-love to having a spa day, to, I'm going to get that sweet treat for myself. It's not about the actions, even though the actions really do help you, for sure, to get to that place of self-love. But it's really about, can you sit with yourself for 5 minutes with nothing around you, with no stimulation, and sit with yourself and really get to know yourself in that way. That's how you're really going to start loving. And I started a meditation practice in 2022 that really changed my life. I had a spiritual teacher. His name is Chandresh Bardwaj. And he really he teaches Tantra. And Tantra is very also bastardized in the Western because people contribute it to sex, but it's really about really loving yourself and the goddess within and that feminine energy and really cultivating that. And once I started meditating and really honing in on who I was, what I wanted, and how I wanted to show up in the world, that's when things started really opening up for me.
I love that. So like that idea of being present is so hard these days because there's so many distractions, right? Like there's so much noise in the media. There's just so much bad news. And also like we're constantly on our devices that it's really hard to sit and be present. And in my lab, I study something called anhedonia, which is like a lack of joy and pleasure in things where you kind of just feel meh or blah. And a lot of times people, they can't feel because they're just so checked out by all of the distractions. So it's hard to even forget loving yourself. It's hard to even love things that you used to enjoy, like having a meal, right? Eating a meal and enjoying it and like savoring it is really difficult for people these days because they're so distracted and checked out. Just sitting still and resting, people feel empty. They feel restless when they're not busy. So I think there's something to that. Like, are you okay to just sit still? How do you feel when you're just being present? Do you feel restless? Do you feel empty? because that's information for you. Don't ignore it, right? Don't try to fill that void with like all these busy things. Try to understand what that's about. Why is it that you feel empty? Why is it that you feel restless when you're just sitting still? What's that thing that you're running from? And I think some people are running from trauma. In my research, I find that, they're busying themselves. They don't want to feel because of trauma. But in other cases, it's like core wounds. Like maybe as a child, they weren't loved. Maybe they weren't told they were special, but whatever it is, you can get back to that. And journaling may be helpful. Meditation, like you said, may be helpful, but there are other type of like body work that you can do to also get back into your body and be more grounded so that you start to know yourself again. You are like really active with music, and I'm just curious to know how that fits into that self-love for you.
I've always been singing since I was a child. Actually, since I was a baby. My mom would tell stories that I was singing songs before I could talk. Like Rod Stewart would come on the radio and I would be baby talking like, like Maggie May. And so it's always been a part of me. And I think God just gave me that gift. It's the only thing that really fills me up. And to go back to what you said before about the distractions. I'm sorry for changing lanes.
Oh, no.
But I always attribute it to getting a massage. The distractions that you're seeing. Imagine somebody giving you a massage for 12 hours a day. You wouldn't feel good anymore. It feels really good that first hour.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, it feels so nice. You're so relaxed. And then it starts to hurt. And then after 12 hours of that, can you imagine how you would feel? It's exactly the same thing on your phone, with all of these devices, with with all of the information that we're getting constantly. We're getting a 12-hour massage, but the massage is our brain, and it's dopamine and it's serotonin, all of these chemicals that are being released. And I probably shouldn't say this because I make a living on social media. I want you to watch my content, but I also need you to go outside and touch some grass.
I think it's more appropriate coming from someone like you, right? Because you're saying, listen, it's not the thing that's bad, right? It's not the thing that's toxic. It's the behavior around the thing, right? Like it's the same for just about any great thing in life, right? Too much of it and depriving yourself of other things is not how you become happier, right?
Absolutely.
It's being able to dabble into all the sensations, because when I watch your social media, I'm feeling entertained. I'm feeling stimulated, right? I'm like excited by the content. But at the same time, you're right. If I see it all the time, so it's not going to be as pleasurable. In fact, I'll start to feel dull. So it is about stimulating the other senses, right? Like getting out, touching grass.
And it dulls your intuition. Your intuition is a whisper. It is not loud. And going back to sitting on your own, and as you were saying, things and topics will pop up when you're sitting by yourself, and that's your higher self saying like, "Hey, you need to work on this a little bit. I know it's a bit uncomfortable. I feel you, but you got to dig into it a little bit more, and you will." Once you sit with yourself and you start loving yourself and loving where you're at, that's when everything's going to open up and your intuition is going to get louder and louder.
Back to the music, because your music is phenomenal, and you've had several tracks out. You've performed live. I'm sure people DM you all the time and they're like, "How did you do it? Like, I want to be like you. How did you pursue this passion?" So what do you say to those people who are your diehard fans and they also want to be like you? How did you turn that pain into purpose and really follow your passion?
Don't overthink it. Stop trying to be a perfectionist. And I say this to myself every single day because it's still a struggle for me. And I know it's a struggle for everybody else. Don't overthink putting yourself out there, because if you overthink it, then you're going to think about how you're being perceived, and then that's going to shut you down. You just got to let yourself rip, not a fart, but just let your soul rip. That's why I call them spiritual teeth, because you just like let it all go. And people are either going to gravitate towards you or they're not. I mean, there are a lot of people that watch my content. They probably hate watch me. And they're like, this girl is so cringy and cheesy. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you think so. If you think something cheesy is like somehow bad and I'm not being, hateful, if you're commenting negative things on somebody that's really not trying to be hateful, then that tells me more about you than it does about me. And that's fine. Leave that go. But it's all about just not overthinking how you're being perceived. And it's harder than it is, but...
It is. And people are going to talk about you whether you're following your dreams or not, right? So you might as well follow your dreams and have them talk about you.
And I saw a really good piece of content the other day. It was posted by Tink. I don't know if you know who she is, but she does a podcast on iHeartRadio, I believe. And she said something that really struck me. Timothée Chalamet did a speech, I believe, for the SAG Awards. And he said that I'm in pursuit of greatness. And this award just really solidifies that. So thank you so much on this journey. It was an amazing speech. You should watch it. And she said, I'm probably butchering how she said it, but she mentioned, like, if a woman went up and said that, would other women react the same way? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, no. If I would have posted something like that, I would have had a lot of women being like, take a step back. You're not being humble. You're not being grateful. It's okay to know where you're at and know where you want to go and say it to the world. And as a woman, I feel like that's even more important. And with fellow women that are watching other women on social media, you don't have to support everybody because not everybody is worth supporting. But when you see someone that's really doing something with their life and they're making something out of nothing, like, support them.
Yeah.
Agreed. It doesn't take that. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of women, especially with your success, that are trying to kind of knock you down a couple pegs and be like, you should be a little bit more grateful for being on Oprah. You should be da-da-da-da. No. Yeah, I was on Oprah. Yeah, I have a book. Yeah, I'm published. And I hope to say all of those things one day as well. I'd love to meet Oprah.
I have a feeling that you will be definitely published. You have a lot of knowledge, and I'm surprised you don't have a book deal already. But that's another thing to discuss. You're just really so positive. And when I say positive, I don't mean like you're always happy. I mean, the energy is it really is so motivating. So even when you're down, we're getting energized. Even when you're on top of the world, we're getting energized, right? What would you say to someone who's really in a rut right now? Like, we talked about being in ruts, or feeling as if we're in a rut in 2022 and making a change. What if someone's listening and they're like, well, I don't have your talent. I don't have your spunk. You're confident. I'm not. Like, someone who's really down and they're like, well, I don't have any of these things. What would you tell that person who's listening right now?
I would tell them to imagine a 10-second clip of their future. In manifesting and when you're stuck, sometimes it's really hard to know exactly what you want. And I've been in that place a lot. People always say, oh, just visualize exactly what you want in your future. And you're like, I don't really know like what that even is. I feel so numb. I feel so stuck. I don't even know. But it is quite an easier task to close your eyes and just think of yourself walking in a house that you feel comfortable in and petting your dog and seeing a glimpse of your husband and feeling the happiness. It's the feeling rather than the thing, I guess. And those 10-second clips that you just replay in your mind over and over and over again, that's what I was doing when I was feeling my most stuck. And I can only really attribute it to my experience. I would play music in my car that was really fun or made me feel like cinematic. And then I would envision those 10-second clips. I would envision me walking on the red carpet. I was delivering bread. Okay. Like there was no there was no way for me to get from point A to point B at that point. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I want to walk on a red carpet. Okay, I see it. I see it in my dress. Okay, I want to make out with Jason Momoa. Okay, I'm going to see and like make out with him in my dream. And all of these things, even if they're so far-fetched, they don't make sense. It still raises your vibe and it really gets you unstuck. And it's fun. Find the joy. That's how you get unstuck. Find what you have loved since you were a child. Like when I was a kid, I loved playing in the dirt. I liked laying on the ground. And now, I was talking about this in another podcast. Now I feel like an idiot as an adult because I'm literally laying on the ground with my dog. My dog's like licking me and stuff. And my parents are saying like, Mandy, get off the ground. The neighbors think you're a freaking freak. And I'm like, good. They do. Do exactly what you used to do when you were a kid. You'll get unstuck. I promise you.
That tool that you talked about is actually a psychology term called time traveling, right? And you can do it either way. You can time travel in the future or in the past. And for the past time traveling, what people tend to do is they'll learn about, like, let's say an ancestor, like their great grandma, right? And whenever like I hear stories of my like great grandma, it's like, yeah, she got married because my parents are from Trinidad. She got married at 13 and she had 14 children and she had this. And I'm like, whoa, like what a terrible life. But then with the time travel tool, you're supposed to put yourself in your like ancestor's shoes and be like, wow, like they had it hard, but like, look what they produced. Like they survived. They had little, but then they had their kids and their kids had their kids. And like, where would we be without that one person's struggle? And so like the time travel can work either way, right? It could be for your future or it could help you to practice gratitude for your past, right? So I think that's a really powerful tool and it has imagery with it. And, I think that it can also like be used for journaling, right? Like some people have a hard time figuring out what to write about, but the time travel really helps because, with the future, you could write whatever you want. And in the past, you could imagine whatever you want, right? So like, I think it's a very powerful tool, especially when you're feeling stuck and you're feeling uninspired because there are no rules when it comes to the future or the past, right? You could just go ham, right?
That is such a great idea to go into the past as one of your ancestors. I'd never even thought about that. I'm going to totally do that. I always feel, I'm a very spiritual person and I always feel my Aunt Natalie, I've never really, I think I met her maybe a few times when I was a baby, but I always feel her around me. And my mom always says, you and your Aunt Natalie would have been such good friends because she was very creative like you and very eccentric. And I always think about her and maybe I'll do that with her. Maybe I'll go back in time.
Aw. Well, I always ask my experts, and you are one of our experts in joy and in the arts. I always ask my experts about a time in their lives when on the outside, everything looked put together, but they were really secretly struggling, and how did they get through it?
Well, honestly, a lot of the things we talked about today, that was how I got out of my rut. And it's not even about getting out of it. It's about understanding that there are obstacles and life is full of them. And how are you going to flow with them like a river rather than fight against them? When I was fighting against everything that was happening in my life, I mean, you're fighting, you're in fight or flight. You're not flowing. You're not in your feminine energy. You're not allowing creation to happen. You are just fighting for your life. I would tell people to stop fighting it. Let life happen for you because it is happening for you. As crazy as it sounds, there are devastating things that are happening to people all over the world. And is it their fault? Absolutely not. But how can you take what is going on in your life right now and transmute that into something bigger, something better? I heard another thing the other day where this woman was talking about her struggles, and she had a very, very hard past. It was honestly hard to listen to. And she said, I kept thinking, wow, what a great testimony this is going to be. What a great testimony this is going to be when I finally get to where I'm going. And it makes me cry just to even think about it. But like, in a marketing perspective, every brand needs a story, and every person is a personal brand. So what is your hero story? Create it for yourself. Be cinematic, be dramatic, girl. Do whatever you need to do, and romanticize even the awful things that are going on. Romanticize it. It makes it so much easier to get through.
Wow, so powerful.
Thanks.
Tell us about your wonderful shows that are coming up, and also your singles, and where we can find you and follow you and continue to support and enjoy your work.
Well, thank you so much. Dr. Judith, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. You can follow me at Mandy Brooke Official on Instagram, TikTok. You can find me on YouTube as well under Mandy Brooke Official. I'm going to be starting to do some vlogging on YouTube. I'm going to experiment with it, so longer form content is coming. I'm also going to be releasing some singles in the next few months. You can find those on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. I have quite a few songs out right now that are quite funny. One particularly about getting wieners in my DMs. You know, I don't really want to see that, but a lot of it is really based on being in your 30s and dating and how crazy it is and just trying to find yourself, really. I have a song called Orthopedic Hoe that's about wanting to wear heels and not being able to anymore because you're 32 and you have to wear orthopedic shoes like your grandmother does. So just definitely relatable songs that people can connect to. And I have a podcast called Broken Bitches Guide, where it's the podcast that I needed 3 years ago when I was going through my struggles. And it's basically a self-help comedy podcast, but it's basically saying like, hey, I know that you're struggling and I may be like a few steps ahead of you, but hey, I'm just down the path a little bit. Here are the sticks that are in your path. Let me show you the way a little bit. And season 3 is going to be premiering on March 6th. So I'm very excited about that.
I'm excited too. I think it's a brilliant idea. And the way that you bring comedy into self-help is so needed. And, how like you're so real, like you're literally saying, I was just there. Let me help you out versus here I am in my mansion. Let me show you a glimpse of it. And maybe, just maybe you can meet me here someday. But like, I love it. And we're all here for it. So thank you so much for being in the vault today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
The pleasure was really mine. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. When you subscribe, it helps me to continue to deliver this mental health information for free to millions of listeners. So please support my mission. Please pick up my book, High Functioning, and let's build a happier life together.